Hello and welcome to the second Elite Prospects 2024 NHL Draft Ranking. It is a thinner group today than normal, but we have 7 of the smartest people here. We're going to start right away. Number 1, Macklin Celebrini. Any objections?
No, it's really a
Easy
spot.
start.
All right, David, tell us about Macklin.
Yeah, I haven't watched him as much as some of you. I think I just accepted that he's the first overall for this class. But honestly, his performance at the World Juniors was really amazing. Like he did everything on the ice. He didn't have the most ice time all the time, but when he got on the ice, he was the main creator for the team. So what I like about him is the pace of his game. He does everything in motion, and the handling skills, the skating, it works. They work super well together, honestly. And he can manipulate defenders. He spots the tiniest advantages, like a small lane, odd man rush. Like he always knows when these things are coming, and he knows where to cut to take advantage of these opportunities. So he's really smart. He has all the skills, and he has on top of it the two-way game, the physical skills. Like he goes in the corner. There's not much missing, honestly. I struggle to really find a strong weakness in this game or anything. So he's going to be probably the best player on your team when whatever team drafts him. Like he has that kind of potential. He's your first line center. It could be one of the better players in the NHL someday.
All right, so now the debate becomes Ivan Demidov, Cayden Lindstrom, Cole Eiserman, question mark? Where are we at? Who's 2? Who's 3?
I like Cayden Lindstrom. That's who I've been feeling at number 2. I know we've talked about it in the Slack a lot about these next couple spots are splitting hairs, but just love the potential, right? He's just scratching the surface with his size, his skating, his small area puck game, the shot, and what we're seeing right now is not a polished, finished product, right? Like, so you can imagine that he could also be a first line center one day in the NHL, and he could have that kind of unique upside with his size and skill and speed. So I kind of give that a little bit of an edge over maybe more of the 1 or 2 dimensional wingers that have maybe some more electric stuff in their arsenal, but don't have the overall upside as being like a really impact player in all 3 zones.
It's all about the ability to show what's special, and that's really the difference maker, I think, when we're talking about top 5 prospects. And Demidov shows the most special to me, like the most special skills, most special deception, the stick handling skills. He doesn't have the same upward curve in his development as Lindstrom or maybe Levshunov, so that might be an issue. But he was injured. He's stuck in the MHL in a quite bad development system for prospects, honestly, because they keep him down when they should be playing in the KHL and the professional league. So what I did like about his game, even though in the MHL he's always experimenting like top prospects do, like he's trying every play in the book, always looking for the highlight reel. When he did play in the KHL for some time, he played a different kind of game. We saw his motor a bit more. I think he has that other facet, that or other efficient side to his game that he hasn't really showed in the MHL because he doesn't need to. But yeah, really, well, what separates him from others to me is really the special skills. I think he has more than Levshunov and Lindstrom, who are my 2 other candidates for this spot.
Yeah, he's
All
the
right,
most
Russ,
dynamic
your
guy.
argument?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just add, I think what he does well too is on his puck possession. When he gets the puck, he does that circle back thing where nobody can get the puck from him, and he's kind of resetting the offense. And then with a really great pass, a lot of times he could find the open guy or go to the net. But I think that's something that not a lot of players could do. David talked about his motor. That's great. And I think he could be a first liner as a winger, a center, no way. But as a winger, possible.
Yeah, he's got that kind of potential to be the best player on your team. Again, a bit like Celebrini. But all 3 of these players have that kind of potential. I just see it a bit more in Demidov, but that's my personal preference.
Looking at all of the rankings that have been input, we have Demidov on the majority of them. So unfortunately, Cam is outnumbered. He'll just have to settle for the very likable, incredibly talented Cayden Lindstrom at number 3. Number 4, I think this is where things get interesting. Again, the Cole Eiserman question mark. This is an opportunity we could talk about him, or we could take it in a different direction and talk about some of these defensemen, Anton Silayev, Sam Dickinson, Artyom Levshunov, who looks like a new player over these last couple of months. So let's start with David, and then we'll work around the room and see how everyone feels.
Yeah, finally, I kind of have a preference on this debate for a while, which just who's my favorite between these players. But I think with a couple of performances from Levshunov in the past few weeks, I think he has separated himself. His what it comes down to is that his highs are higher than Dickinson and Silayev for me. He does really everything. When he's on, he does everything on the ice. He picks up the puck in the defensive zone, passes it to a teammate, he's activating the neutral zone, and then he's making the final play in the offensive zone. So he can be all over the ice. He's really the linking piece between all of these plays, and he has all the tools you want. He's a bit low pace as a player, so you don't see his skating that much. It looks below average at times, but when he gets going, like he does have this kind of speed, that kind of acceleration and balance, and he can play a hard, mean physical game too on the defensive side. And his gapping is getting better. His decision making is improving compared to his first showing in the NCAA. So he's improving, and he has all those skills, and he's really an impact player. And more and more, we see that kind of playmaking game develop. In the last game I watched, he did defensive zone. Before he got the puck, he did this kind of fake drive down the wall before coming back up. So he just created space for himself by faking the defender, trying to push him down before coming back up. That's really an advanced move that we don't see many prospects doing. So he has those moments of really advanced ideas.
All right. So do we have any arguments against it, Russ? What do you think of Levshunov, and where do you stand on this debate?
I like Levshunov. I don't think he wins as many puck battles as Dickinson. I think Dickinson's better that way. And I think Dickinson a little better on the PK. I think it's just like splitting hairs, but I think Lindstrom and Helenius ahead of the other two. But for defensemen, I like Dickinson just a little bit better.
I like Levshunov better. I like Zayne Parekh better than Dickinson too. But yeah, it's like David said, the highs are just so impressive, right? Like his ability to spin off forechecking pressure, make an outlet, and then he's already in the rush. Like he's not even trailing it. Like he covers so much ground so quickly. Same with when he makes a boneheaded play on the defensive side. He's just there. He just swallows up ice. And so he can really correct his mistakes with those feet and that long stride. Yeah, I think that the tools are so impressive with him in that size package, is that he's going to be a good player. He's going to be able to figure out some of those miscues that he makes. And he flashes so high up that he's not the smartest player on the ice, but he's smart enough.
And his dynamic ability is sky high. I like the sequence that David broke down. I mean, that's something that you don't see very much, only from the smartest offensive players. And I think with him, it's not always going to be the prettiest version of the high-end play, but he does make the high-end plays regularly enough to believe that he can do them in the NHL. And as Cam mentioned, the skating, the recovery ability, he is low pace with the puck, but when he really steps on the gas, no one can catch him. So I think he's the easy choice for number 4 for us right now, especially because this board is about to get real messy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just think he has the highest chance of becoming a number 1 out of all of those defensemen. That pretty much comes down to this.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right, number 5. What are we thinking? Do we have a case for Zayne Parekh, Lauren?
I'm not the only, or Cam's not the only person that has Parekh ahead of Dickinson on their ranking, but I just think that the highs, although it's like a super boom or bust potential with Parekh, is like the highs are so incredibly high. If he hits at the NHL level, I mean, it's basically the upside is super strong in my opinion. I just think that he's got more offensive upside than Dickinson, at least what I've seen certainly this season, even though Dickinson's production is, where it is right now, point per game player. I also think that the defensive side of Parekh's game has come a long way since the beginning of the season. He's more engaged. He's, more physical than at least I saw at the beginning of the season. He's definitely more, as far as like the rush defense, the gap, it looks a little bit stronger than it did maybe even just a couple months ago. And so I really like that if the defense can continue to build in this trend in this positive direction, I just think it's a no-brainer that given the offensive upside, that's why I would have him ahead of Dickinson at this point. That being said, I haven't watched a lot of European players, anyone else outside of the OHL this season. So if there's anybody else we would put at 5, I feel like 5 might be a little bit high for Parekh, but it could pay off in the long run.
Yeah, it's really a debate between Parekh and Dickinson, because on one hand you have this super high upside player in Parekh who does more right on the ice. I feel like sometimes. I feel like Dickinson is perceived as this super offensive defenseman who can really create on the ice, and he does that, but it's mostly he plays in a super favorable environment in London, who is very forgiving of mistakes, so he can pretty much do what he wants on the ice, except against top teams, but against most competition, he can pretty much do what he wants on the ice, and the mistakes don't matter. And I think Parekh does more for his team than Dickinson does for his own club. So there's a separator there, and like I said, Levshunov, the highs, and like Lauren said, the highs are higher for Parekh. It's just that we also have to take into account the floor of a player, and for that, I think maybe the Dickinson still wins out in this debate for now because of the tools. They're really insane. Like he has that high-end skating ability, that size, that physicality. The defensive game projects to be easier for him at the NHL level. I don't think he's necessarily always more effective than Parekh, because I think Parekh is underrated in that defensive aspect, but it's just going to be easier for Dickinson because he can cover ice super fast, even faster than Parekh, and he has that kind of range with his stick. It's easier for him to play a physical game, although Parekh is also physical. So the game is just going to be easier. That comes to it for Dickinson, and that really matters.
I had one more note that I forgot to add about Dickinson. And I don't know, I didn't quantify this for everybody, but he's on the ice for a lot of his team's goals. I don't know how he stands up compared to the others, but he's on there for a lot of them.
Yeah, but anyone put in that spot would be
well. I mean, but you still got to be there.
I guess the counterpoint is that Parekh is scoring most of Saginaws' goals. So
yeah, I mean they're both really good at this, but it's just I think one environment is more favorable to points and looking good than the other one. I think a bit. There's not a massive gap between these two, but it's still something to consider. I like the Dickinson more, honestly, just because of the floor. It's higher. We don't have to project as much. Like we can almost know what he's going to be at the NHL level, and as long as he's coachable, a coach is going to be able to take those tools and redirect them to a better to make him more effective at the NHL level. I feel like on the defensive side, and he's going to keep the same activation game, so he's going to contribute offensively. He won't need to read the play super well to be effective, I guess.
What about Silayev? Does anyone like Silayev over Dickinson?
I don't see a number one potential with Silayev. Everyone seems to see it. I really don't, because of the hockey sense. I think that the tools are even better than Dickinson, but the hockey sense gap, it's there. Like it's not as massive maybe as at the beginning of the season. I think he's slowly improving. I feel that that's the case more than others on our team, but still I see him more as an supportive force to someone who can really drive the play, because the handling skills are still average in terms of projection, and he's making a lot of bad decisions on the ice, Silayev still. So I'm not sure. I think the tools are going to be almost the only great aspect of his game at the NHL level, more than Dickinson.
I'd say, I'd make the argument too that Dickinson is full of errors on the ice too, and Silayev at 6'7", and the amount of ice that he can cover too. Personally, I have Silayev ahead. Again, we're kind of splitting hairs. I don't think it's by much, but it's, I got him a few spots ahead. But I know Lauren loves Dickinson though, so we got to give her a chance to bump him up. But I think Silayev, he's a unique one, because I've had the viewings too early on in the season. We're like, holy smokes, this kid is doing pretty darn well in the KHL at 17 and with his size, but has he taken big strides this season? Probably not. I know that Lassie feels like he's even taken steps back in his development throughout the year, but the tools, the size, the skating, he's going to be even if the team he ends up for, the fans hate him because he can make those terrible decisions, or when he rushes the puck, it's he gives everyone a heart attack, but not in a good way. But he's going to probably be like a 3-4 as a baseline, right? Just with those tools he has.
So just to peel back the curtain a little bit, I'm looking at all of our rankings, and it's 3-3. So it's a very close one. So we're going to bring this to tiebreaker. It is Daniel's first opportunity to speak. We haven't been ignoring you. We've known you've been here, but now you get a chance to settle the top 5. Parekh or Dickinson?
Obviously, I have limited viewings of both, but I think I would probably take Dickinson over Parekh right now, just because of the size, the physical tools. Very similar to what David said about a coach being able to mold all those tools into something that's like a top pairing quantity. My Parekh viewings have been really hit and miss in terms of what he's done offensively, which has been incredible, and what he's done defensively, which is not. Like, he likes to bear hug players because he can't get inside position. Right now it's Dickinson for me.
Okay,
have it.
there it is. We have Dickinson at 5, Parekh at 6. Is it time to finally talk about what's going on with Cole Eiserman?
Yeah, is it a sure thing that we need to rank Parekh ahead of Eiserman?
The numbers are in
I
favor
wouldn't.
of Parekh over
Yeah,
Eiserman at this
that's what
stage.
I thought.
So
I just wanted to make
I
sure.
think we just bypass that debate for now.
Mitch, do you want to talk about Eiserman?
Yeah, okay. So I'm the sacrificial lamb. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So Cole Eiserman this year, obviously scoring a lot of goals. I think in terms of his transition play, in terms of his playmaking, this has been a step back compared to his play with the U18s last season. He really seemed to turn a corner when he was up there with Hagens and Moore. Now he's kind of playing more of a dump and chase game. He's wilting under pressure. He's losing kind of that power edge to his game that he's previously had a little bit as he tries to play more of this finesse, low efficiency type game that doesn't really work with his style. On the flip side, Eiserman can also teleport pucks from anywhere in the offensive zone to the top corner with shocking ease. I mean, he has the biggest wheelhouse of a shooter that we've seen in several drafts at this point. Back foot, front foot, way across the body. It doesn't matter. He can put it hard on net from anywhere. The second before a goal, he is incredible. Like, it's not just the shot, but the ability to like win inside positioning, rush the net, get open, pick up the rebound, and so on. So it's going to be hoping that he can develop the areas around the shot more and become more than just a 1-second player in the offensive zone, because they're having lots of 1-second players in the offensive zone, especially from the national team development program, who haven't panned out. Kiefer Bellows, Oliver Wahlstrom, and so on. So we're going to see hopefully a more of a dynamic side, more of a playmaking side, and more of a physical side to Eiserman's game in the second half. And his game over the last few weeks has been trending in that direction. And it is important to remember he has played in a more translatable way before, even if it was just for half a season. And he's also been in and out of the lineup in the first half this year.
I have something to add because I've seen him about 4 times live, watched a lot of them last year too. A lot of your points I get. I wouldn't even put Wahlstrom, Bellows, any of those guys with him because he can get to the net. Those guys could never get to the net. Like, that wasn't even in their game. Like you said, with that second before a goal, he can get to the net and overwhelm a goalie, and I've seen him do it. What was interesting in the All-American Prospects game, though, was they originally had him with Bednarik and Plant. Plant's not really much an offensive player, as you know. Once in a while, he could pass the puck. He's really good defensively and smart. But in warm-ups, he was working with Connelly a lot, and they were complementing each other really well. I think the coaching staff saw that when they made the change, then Eiserman gets his goal, and they were both equally setting each other up. So I do think there's something to be said about who is he playing with this year, too, that matters about his play.
He's been
played a lot
pretty
with
much an
Hagens,
even
right?
split. Yeah, it's been pretty much an even split with Hagens as the center and Plant on the other side, and then with Bednarik and Humphreys, or sometimes like Austin Baker or whatever. But
because to me, there's a big drop off between Hagens and Bednarik.
I think the counter argument
Humphreys.
to that would be that he's probably been worse with Hagens, other than his most recent game, than without him, which is kind of like an interesting little thing, right? Because you expect him to be kind of this goal scorer who can play off his teammates, but he's not very good at getting them the puck, right? And so
That's true.
And so it's this interesting little position that he's in, where sometimes he's not like dynamic enough to be the guy, but he's also not good enough as a supporting player to make his teammates better, other than if he's just like being super aggressive as a shooter. But like, again, the counter is like, oh, he scores goals, he's trending in the right direction, and like there's so much ability there. Like, I've been watching him since he was in Shattuck St. Mary's, and like he's always been limited in terms of like translatable skill, but in terms of like the highs are incredible. Like, the highs were right there with Celebrini back then, and while Celebrini has taken off, while Eiserman has kind of remained static, the highs are still there against USHL competition, against NCAA competition, and so like he's really going to be the wild card in this draft. Like, there's a chance that he continues to slide and he goes 17th. There's a chance that he rebounds and he goes 3rd. So it'll be very interesting to see how he performs in this second half. But do we have anyone who we think is better than Cole Eiserman for right now?
I would still have him ahead of Silayev. I think the the upside is potentially greater in terms of goal scorer, because that's like the most important thing. And I'm not fully sold on Silayev, and I'm also taking into account the opinion of other people who aren't in the meeting right now. So I think we should have Eiserman ahead.
I think that pretty much sums it up. We have a lot of support for Eiserman, not a ton of support for Silayev overall. So Silayev at 8. Does Silayev move down a little bit? Do we start talking about Konsta Helenius, as Russ brought up earlier? Berkly Catton, what do we do here?
I've got Silayev just because I think that the physical tools are just so great that he's just such a safe player that could play in your top 4 long term. Helenius is just so advanced with his habits and his awareness, but he lacks the dynamic skill and the dynamic feet. So he's like, if he breaks right, he's probably a second line center on a good team that can play in all situations for you. And then Catton, he's got a little more dynamic offensive game than Helenius does, but a little bit smaller, on the wing. So I a little less value there too. Both of them are smarter than Silayev, but they aren't 6'7" and can skate like him. So that's the order I have them in.
I'm not as much of a fan of Helenius, I'll say it. Like, I really appreciate the details in his play and the physical engagement for his size and the two-way game and his passing vision. It's just a skill level, and I keep coming back to this every time we talk about him. I think the tools are closer to average than high-end. Like, maybe they're slightly above average. I don't see him creating as often as other top prospects in this draft. Of course, he plays in a professional league, so that may hide some of his skills. He kind of missed his opportunities to show these skills at the World Juniors. He did toward the end of the tournament too, but it's always like he shows it a bit, but not fully. So I'd be more conservative with his ranking, but I think we're getting in his range. I have him at 12 right now. It's a bit low, maybe. But after Silayev, I think there are similar players around him now. So I think it's his right range.
It's a shame we're missing some of our regionals in this meeting, because, this would be the fight of all time right now, because I'm looking at the rankings and oh my goodness, there would be some hands thrown over this. So I'm not really sure what to do, because you have the 6'7" Silayev who skates like the wind and has a ton of potential, but we don't have the support to put him in that position right now. So
am I the only one who's got him up high, eh?
Well, there's also David over them, but regional emphasis, regional viewings, game reports, and stuff like that forces us into this position where, I think everyone is going to dislike this. This is great. There are going to be no winners.
I don't know.
I think the key is Helenius a center. I think he can be. If you don't think he can be, then I would drop him below.
I think he can be a center. Obviously, the situation and development is going to be the end result, will be the determining factor long term here. But I definitely think he can play the middle of the ice long term. I mean, he plays the middle of the ice in the league already too. He was playing the middle of the ice for Finland, the WJC at 17 too, right? And I thought he got better as the tournament wore along. I think his mind and the details in his game will allow him to play center in his playmaking too. It's just, you don't expect highlight reel goals from him.
I like Catton. I think he's ridiculously manipulative. The amount of feints he does is crazy. He'll drop like a dime area pass right on tape. Like, it's absurd, right? He drives the middle, breaks ankles. He plays a little bit of like Riley height defense, so not a hunting high, but he's just so dynamic in transition. I really don't want to see him drop much more. Like,
I also like him. I also like him much more than Helenius. I'm just trying to bring the opinions of last scene here.
Yeah, like I watched a bit of Helenius, and he's so defensively like advanced already, like stick clamps, inside position, retrieval wins, all that type of thing. But he goes for the safe play like 90% of the time. Like you'll be on like a odd man advantage. He'll have a lane to the inside and he'll just pass it to the goal line, right? And not even activate in the middle for the give and go or whatever. It's like, I don't know if that's coaching or whatever it is, just the way the league is, but like, I don't see the super, super high upside. I agree with that. He's like a second line center is like where you would kind of see his future at. But I think there's more boom bust potential with Catton. It really goes down to like your philosophies around that, right? Like, do you go what high upside, low certainty, or do you go, upside? Like, but much more certainty that Helenius is going to be an NHLer.
We have
This has
strong
only
support.
made this more of a quagmire than it already was.
I do agree with Catton first
Yeah,
ahead of
me too.
Helenius.
It's
I
just
like the playmaking more than you. I think the Russian game is not elite because of his skating, but in terms of mechanics and understanding, it's pretty up there. He wasn't that good at top prospects game, but that doesn't matter too much. It's just that he has the puck all the time. So I wonder how he's going to do in a different role. Like he's really the main offensive motor of his team. Does he work as a inside a more complex line? I can't put it like this. I don't know. He's not that diverse as a player, but the skills in terms of average, it's higher than Helenius. So that would be my argument.
But as a center, I don't know if it is as a center. I think Helenius is a better center.
I agree. I agree with that too.
so I've seen Berkly for a really long time, and I'm just thinking about my first game report on him was a very long time ago, and I think he's become more puck dominant as the years have gone by, as he's risen the levels. Had the puck more and more and more, and so I've seen him a lot where he's kind of just been not necessarily a supporting guy, but someone who gets the puck 70 times instead of 110, and he was just as dynamic, just as skilled in that position. So, yeah, I'm just introducing more information to make this more of a problem. But I think looking at everything that we have available to us right now, because maybe we have to go with Helenius over Silayev, and I think we probably have to go with Catton over Helenius for now. And so that's probably the way that this shakes out, and that also advances us. Okay, so that's our top 10. Celebrini, Demidov, Lindstrom, Levshunov, Dickinson, Parekh, Eiserman, Catton, Helenius, Silayev. So let's pick up the pace here. Who are we thinking about for 11?
I just want to say that. That's really nice because it also matches with the chase board. So the stats are backing it up too.
Nice. Okay, so I think Jimmy hasn't had a chance to talk yet. We do have a Norwegian playing in Sweden who we can talk about. So let's get Jimmy in here, get him warmed up, hear what he has to say.
Brandsegg-Nygård, which is his name. I've been watching him all season. He is to project him, I would say he's he could be anything but a first-line driver. So he can be, I think he has top 6 potential, but if he doesn't pan out, he can play in a third line or a fourth line. He's a forechecking monster. He has a good shot. He has patience with the puck. I think he reads the game very well. The skills isn't super good for him to drive play, but this guy has a really good chance to become an NHL player. So I think he belongs here somewhere 11 to 15. I think we had him 11 last time.
Yeah, and Lassie is in agreement to having him in this range. But
it's too early for me. It's too early a bit.
There are lots of names here that we can go. So, David, why don't you tell us the 85 people that you have over him?
Not 85. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 3 of those that I think really belong ahead. The other ones are more debatable. It's just about the upside, really. More of a middle 6, maybe second line player, because he has all his floor is really high. Like he could almost play in the NHL and survive already because of the physicality, because of the way he wins loose pucks. He goes to the net. He has pretty good two-way details. So he has that kind of floor, and he can score like around the net and from distance with his shot. We saw it at the World Juniors and in league play too. So he has those kind of skills. It's just that the way he creates plays, it's not as creative as some of the other players like Liam Greentree. I have Iginla ahead of him, Trevor Connelly. These players are either smarter or more dynamic overall. They have better tools, or their approach to the game, to playmaking game, is better.
Yeah, I'll echo what David was saying. I've got Buium and Iginla ahead of him as well. A couple other guys. Brandsegg-Nygård, he's just a really kind of well-rounded player, but nothing really jumps off the page. I was a little disappointed with him at the World Juniors. I was expecting him to be the best player on his team and kind of drive play, but He settled for the most part to kind of move around the middle of the ice and look for spots to kind of jump in. Hopefully that, hoping that his teammates are going to find him in space, where, when you're the best player on your team and most skilled player, you should have the puck most of the time and be creating for yourself and for others. So I didn't think he made the most of his opportunity over there. And I know a lot of the NHL scouts were pretty disappointed with his showing too, even though he did have some flashes. That kind of convinced me that instead of being more around that 9, 10, 11 zone, that maybe he's more around that, 15 to 20 level. But he's gone back and he's been good in league play again. So, weighing a 2-week tournament versus the entire league season. So, but yeah, I just think that the dynamic upside goes to Buium, goes to Iginla, even goes to Greentree, to those guys that you can comfortably be like, they're going to be either top 4 or a top 6 guy that can drive offense at a higher rate and maybe get a little more bang for your buck at this point of the draft. But with Brandsegg-Nygård, you're going to get a player. You're very likely to get an NHL player out of it. Maybe it's in your bottom 6 or middle 6, but that's still valuable, especially when you're picking outside the top 10.
All right, Lauren, why don't you tell us about? Hang on, sorry, we'll talk about Buium in a second. Why don't we talk about Liam Greentree? So, Lauren, take us away. You've seen him live. He's been dominating lately. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, sure. Hands down, I guess the most impressive forward out of this OHL group, as far as the consistency, the physical game, the ability to, create offense in a multitude of ways. You got the high end, like the dangles, the evasive maneuvers. For a player who's not the most fleet of foot, again, skating is a bit of an issue, but I don't feel like it's really held him back in any way at this level. The ability to connect plays, to link up with teammates, consistent physical presence as well. He just seems to make something happen on every shift that he's on the ice. I see no reason that he can't carve out a top 6 role as in the NHL. I maybe wonder if because of the skating problems, they move him, they try him out on the wing. But he could easily stay at. They could try him out down the middle of the ice as well. Like, I don't see why they wouldn't at least experiment with it a little bit, especially considering the defensive play, the ability to support, the reads, the lifting sticks. Is kind of super well-rounded, plus the high-end offensive skills as well.
So Greentree would be my vote for number 11, but there are more votes in favor of Zeev Buium. So this is Russ's opportunity to tell us about Buium and where he projects him.
Yeah, I think Buium has picked up speed here. I know I interviewed him probably a month and a half ago, and even things he was telling me then, I think, have gotten better. His speed is definitely there, right? But I think in World Juniors, we saw that his battle was way better than I expected for a young player. And then all of a sudden, he's getting a lot more ice time. He was smart. His zone entries were really smart. His dumps to get the puck out are really smart. He really didn't make many mistakes, and he was super reliable with the puck, besides taking good angles and getting guys winning puck battles in the corners. I think his physical game has actually improved as the year has gone on. And, and that's the fact that he's not 6'2", because, that was wrong. And Denver had that wrong. He laughed about that because I had to get the right height from him. So, but he, maybe he hopes to be that someday. But I do think, right in front of our eyes, he has improved dramatically, even though we all liked him.
Yeah, his ability to make guys miss, either on puck retrievals or coming down on the power play. He embarrassed some guys at the World Juniors there, coming down with a head fake and an inside outside move, and then all of a sudden another one, and he's either going to the net hard himself or making a nice cross slot dish. We'll see if he can pull that off with that edge work at the NHL level. But he has the instincts to do it. He's got the hands to do it. But more impressively is breaking pressure against forecheckers too, coming in with his back to them, that he can still give that fake and shimmy and break them and then make that quick outlet. A couple more inches on him, or maybe some more dynamic north-south speed, and you'd be looking at a future top pairing, top power play guy. Not sure that's the type of player he's going to end up being. And obviously the production, I don't think, really indicates the type of player he's going to be in the NHL. Right now he's producing like he's going to be an all-world offensive defenseman, and that's unlikely to be the case. But I would have him at that spot myself. I've got him at 11.
Okay, Daniel, do you want to talk about Tij Iginla?
Yeah, he plays hockey like he's drank 4 or 5 coffees before. He's just all over the place. He's engaged on every single play. He's trying to beat you with full crossbody dangles, just to get to the inside and create room. He has like a pretty nuanced and wild delay game where he'll just stop up, destroy a gap, and then fire off a backhand or a forehand wrist shot. Like he's improved a lot over the past couple of years. Like I remember watching him in Seattle, and he was kind of just like a checker who would have a flash here and there, and now he's like a dynamic goal scorer who drives play on a line with other first round picks. Like it's pretty wild. I think he's engaged defensively all the time on the back check. He creates by himself. Like he can connect plays. I think he's really, really good. Like I have him in this range. I think he's high upside. There's a lot of risk there because he is kind of like a high frequency, needs the puck touches type of player. But I think he has first line potential for sure. Like he's a tough player to handle for any defender in the WHL right now.
Yeah, so I think based on the votes, based on the analysis, we're looking at Buium, Greentree, Iginla. I think that's 11 through 13. I think that makes sense. I think it respects everyone's work here. I think to further to Daniel's point, Tij is another one of those players who might be like top 8 by the end of the year, just because of his incredible growth throughout the season. Before he was a dangle master, but never actually beat anyone doing it. And now he's beating people like crazy. So we're seeing a player expand his game right in front of our eyes and becoming way, way, way better for it. So I think we have Brandsegg-Nygård still to rank. We have Trevor Connelly, according to David's board, who can fit in here. But I know we have some dissent about where Trevor Connelly should be placed. So we'll talk about Brandsegg-Nygård versus Trevor Connelly.
I see the argument for both, honestly. Do you want the NHL player or the guy who really has to figure it out? But the skill level is much higher, like significantly higher. It's just he's so dynamic. Like he might be the second or third most skilled player in the draft in terms of pure skill. How he uses those skills, that's another question. He's mostly a wide driver, and he attempts the same move against defenders. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, depending on the competition, depending on the defender. But I don't have as much issues with his hockey sense as some of you guys. I think it's an issue of decision making, a bit like Demidov, who he just wants to make the highlight reel play every time, and he makes a lot of hope plays. He just throws pucks to areas hoping teammates are there. But there's moments of legitimate anticipation too, where you can really manipulate the defender, attract a second one, and then drop a pass to a teammate. Like he has those patterns and the offensive thinking too. So when you combine that with a close to elite skill level, like you have a really interesting prospects. There are more aspects to his projection, for sure, but I think we shouldn't drop him too much, because honestly, he might be turning into a steal on draft day if he continues to slide like this.
I was actually fairly impressed with his game at the Fall Classic when we saw him with his playmaking, with his vision that he was snapping pucks around, where he was clearly the most skilled player on the team, but he was really utilizing his teammates well, and I like that. Since then, basically all my tape views are just like him being highly ineffective at even strength, attempting some rushes, showing that great confidence and that skill level to get into the middle of the ice, having the puck poked away, not using his teammates, not making right decisions with the puck. He seems really junior-esque to me, really unpolished. I don't like the style of game. Obviously, all the off-ice stuff comes into play. It's hard not to consider it when you're watching him play. But I think he's going to slide on draft day, and I think it's going to be justified just from how up and down his game is on the ice, let alone the off-ice stuff. Is that, yes, you could, at 25, he could be someone who could play on your top power play unit and be like an impressive top 6 guy, or he's not an NHLer. So for this debate, I take Brandsegg-Nygård, who, like David said, he could almost play in the NHL today. You throw him into the USHL, and I bet you we're going to see a lot more offensive, creative flashes too from him versus playing at the pro level, right? So Connelly could not hang in the Allsvenskan right now. So we're looking at these guys in 5-6 years is what we really care about. But yeah, I've got Connelly way down the board.
Yeah, I don't have Connelly way down. I have him 2 picks apart. I have Nygård higher. I do think he's the safer pick and more NHL ready now. I've seen Connelly do some great end-to-end rushes. I've also seen Connelly, make a bad play, but then go and make up for that play by making a diving stop to stop a scoring chance on a bad play that he made. So I do think there's a little bit with that decision making, but the skating is really, the speed is really good. Speed and stick and puck control is really advanced, very advanced even for the USHL, and that's why he's having so much success. So, like, if a team is really looking, and I get everything that Cam said, and I can't deny any of that, although I'm not putting that into play on my board because he's just too good of a player, and I think he's changed. So that's me. That's just my feeling. But I also just think that, yeah, like David said, he could be the guy that if he goes 15, 16, 20, could end up being the third or fourth best guy in the draft if everything were to hit right.
So I think that's a pretty convincing argument in favor of Connelly below Brandsegg-Nygård, but at 15. So that rounds out the top 15 for now. It's going to get even messier because I think the draft, you could basically rank like some of the guys who I have in the mid-second here justifiably. So strap in, I guess. So, David, you have Igor Chernyshov. I probably said that name terribly. He's the next guy on your board. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, he was amazing last year. I thought he would go top 10 in this draft, and he has really that far for a game with skill. The skating is a bit of a question mark, but the speed is fine. It's more like turning ability and changing direction on a dime. He's a bit hunched over, mostly on inside edges without going to too much details. Like, it's a bit of weakness in terms of agility, but he drives the net. He goes hard to the boards. He battles for puck. He plays with a lot of pace. He has those hard skills. And he can really make defenders look foolish at the NHL level and even at the KHL level. Like, he has those toe drag moves, and he's really smart about how he uses his stick handling. Like, he creates for teammates too. He moves super well away from the puck, at times himself in pockets of space. So he has those hockey sense element, the stick handling skills, and the power forward game. The results are not always there. I talk about his development curve. Like, it's been up and down, and I bet it continues to be up and down as he changes levels from KHL to the NHL. But I think overall he belongs in that spot.
The votes are in favor of him in this spot, so we're just going to put him here and not stress about it too much. We have Ryder Ritchie, who I think we ranked 9th last time, but we also have a new name into this mix, Miguel Marques.
Yes.
So Daniel, tell us a little bit about your boy from PG, Miguel Marques.
Yeah, like I saw him earlier in the season quite a bit, and it was like one off of like an incredible creation game, and then another game where it was just the most inefficient effort ever. But recently, well, not recently, but like going back a month or two, like he's like by far the best player on the ice. I watched him walk into PG, outshine all these first round picks. Just so much pace. He's always involved. He's sprinting constantly into soft area pockets. Works one-touch plays. He baits overreactions. A lot of skill. A lot of feints. Just a lot of breaking down of defenders. And there's still a little bit of inefficiency. Well, still some inefficiency in his game.
Plays that kind of chess playmaking game, but he has those hard skills and the motor and the energy to complement that. And it's pretty unusual for a player of this type. We don't usually see that kind of combination, and that makes him much more projectable and much more potentially skilled at the NHL level, because he's going to be able to attack in diverse ways and keep his production up as the game tightens up too. I really like him, honestly. The skating is not high end. He doesn't have a lot of agility moves, and the physicality is going to be a problem still at the NHL level because of his size and everything. But he tries. He goes to the net hard, and he has all those skills. So he's hard not to love, honestly. And I think he's going to move up, maybe potentially.
His support game is like really strong too. He's like 2 or 3 steps ahead a lot of the time, getting to an open area to support a pass when his teammates just completely enveloped by defenders, and it creates a lot of offense, like especially the WHL level.
Well, what's the difference between him and Ritchie, Mitch?
So Ritchie is a little bit of a smoother player, more fluid operator. He's not in the same position to score as much as Marques is, so there's a little bit of that to consider. But yeah, they're pretty similar players. I think Marques probably has more aggression to his game, more urgency, whereas Ritchie is more mechanically sound, more technically perfect. So it really comes down to, I mean, you could flip a coin with these two guys. I think the more I talk about it, the more I hear other people talk about it, the more I want to take the guy who's more aggressive, more confident. And so I would pick Marques at this stage.
I would too. Just because of the scoring. It's part of the equation still.
Sure. And it's also like, Ritchie is in a position where he's probably never going to post big numbers in PA. And I wonder how much that impacts his ability to transition to the professional level. It's not so much the points, but how you get the points through confidence and stuff like that, developing your skills, expanding your game, and so on. And he's not really in a position to be able to do that in Prince Albert. Okay, so I think that's those two guys back to back. I think it makes sense. I think it reflects just how like razor thin the debate is with those two. And it's nice to get Marques in the top 20 just because of how well he's played and so on. So now we need to tackle the last two spots in this top 20. We have some more WHL players. We have Harrisson Brunicke, Carter Yakemchuk. We can maybe have some European players too. So Cam, why don't you tell us about who you'd have ranked next?
I think I've got Yakemchuk next. Let's see in here. Yeah, I do. Him and Ritchie are kind of right around each other. Yakemchuk is just so wild, right? Because he can frustrate you greatly with his decision making, and then he'll just like dangle a couple of guys and burst of speed and some dynamic side to side edge work, and he can fire pucks. I like the flashes because sometimes he looks brilliant out there, and then 40% of the time he looks awful. And so I think that we respect the highs like we did earlier in the top 10, and that this kid he should be in kind of that 15 to 25 range as, a guy who could potentially be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. I think that is a viable outcome for him.
I would have just one name ahead of him, at least. It's Beckett Sennecke. Is that it? Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's it.
Nailed it.
These are the two awkward guys. These are the two awesome, awkward dudes who just like kind of stumble over their feet but do crazy things.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about him, Lauren?
Yeah, sure. I can start, I guess. Sennecke is just super chaotic as far as like the way he creates the offensive zone, and I think it just is a byproduct of having grown like 5 inches in the last 2 seasons and a year and a half. But he's like so like super crafty handler. Just like even if he can't, even if like the first plan that he has for an attack doesn't plan out, he can create something out of nothing pretty much. Like he can find players basically anywhere on the ice. Super creative. Defensively, I don't see any glaring issues. He's super involved, supports, G back checks. Just a really creative player who, once he gains control of his limbs a little bit, will be a really impactful player at the next level.
Yeah, I used to not see it with him. I see it now. Like he has made so many high-end plays over the past few weeks. Like it's hard not to notice it. And I love the small area games, like the way he can pass in any direction by spinning on himself and still figuring it out with his limbs, like you said, how to hit those teammates. And he's a great compliment to Ritchie when he played together. I really like him. Like he can do a lot, and there's more runway with him than others, like you said.
Okay, so I think it's Sennecke and then Yakemchuk based on the votes that we have. But if Yakemchuk's on the board, that means I have to make the case for Harrisson Brunicke, who has been fantastic over the last few weeks. He's a pretty exciting defenseman, 6'2", mobile, jumps into the play a lot. He's in a little bit of a tough situation. Kamloops is the worst team in the WHL, but he is everything for them. He can provide shutdown defense with his great rush skating, the way that he angles guys out. He jumps into the play. He can dangle guys off the point. So I think he's a little bit on the raw side. It's not always going to be pretty with him. There are lots of turnovers, but I think history shows that this type of defenseman tends to work out. It reminds me a lot of Thomas Harley, and it seems like Thomas Harley has really turned a corner lately, which means I can finally rest in peace. So that would be my argument for Harrisson Brunicke at 21. He's looking like a potential number 2, number 3 defenseman with a high floor.
I think he should be over Yakemchuk, honestly. Like, he's a genius. He's like ahead of every single play defensively. It's insane.
Okay. I think actually the votes are for Brunicke over Yakemchuk. So we'll do that. Is it Jesse Pulkkinen time? Do we continue the theme of big, crazy defensemen? Do we go with smaller dynamic players like Andrew Bashu? What are we doing?
There's 3 names here that I would like. Jesse Pulkkinen, Adam Jiricek and Andrew Basha. I think they're right in that mix. Jesse Pulkkinen has played amazingly well, honestly, over the past few months. Like his stock just keep increasing. He's a overager. You have to take that into account when you project him. But he does the same thing as Yakemchuk, but more control. Like he learned to play a stronger defensive game in his league. He can safeguard his team better. He defends the front of the net super well too with his physicality. He can make breakout plays. He can really make defenders miss. Like we talk about this ability with Buium, but when opponents rush at him, like he really makes them look dumb sometimes with his moves, like with his fakes, and he can beat them. The skating is not great, a bit like Buium, but the timing is so good on these moves that he can still create, and he has got that handling skills. As long as he improves his mobility and learns to really translate his game to North American ice, it could be a second pairing, even a number 2 potentially, but that's a super high upside. I'm not sure he's going to reach that, but he's a really interesting prospect that I think NHL teams will really love. If I can talk about Adam Jiricek, like I know Lassie has soured on him because he hasn't really played this season, and when he has played, he's been injured for a couple of weeks. But when he has played, he wasn't that good, honestly. His stock has been trending down, but the potential is still there. Like he looks like his brother. He's very physical. Like he's mean, honestly, around the net, on the boards. He can make breakout plays, and he can really activate into the play. His decision making has been downright bad at times this season. Like he doesn't recognize lanes as well. He misses teammates sometimes. The shot is sometimes a positive, sometimes a negative. So I don't think he has figured out his game that much. He hasn't developed as much as other players, and now he's been injured and he's young. So I think next year is going to be the year where he really develops more, but we shouldn't bring him down too much, honestly.
I mean, I have Pulkkinen higher than Jiricek. I think Pulkkinen's poise is better. And I was shocked at how much he does make players miss. Really, really shocked. And then if he plays at guys in his own age group, he murders them at times in the corners. Just murders them.
Yeah, and we can anticipate that maybe Jiricek next year is going to look like more like Pulkkinen because of the age difference, because he's further behind his development, but we can't know. So when there's uncertainty, we have to bring players down a bit.
Are there any objections to having Pulkkinen at 22? We can always put him down and then work back up if we need to.
I'm a little worried about the feet, but it's all right.
Yeah.
We'll have him and Yakemchuk back to back. They can be the worry about the feet duo.
There you go.
And then Jiricek, do we think 23 is too high, or do we think this is right about the place?
Maybe Andrew Basha ahead of him. Do you want to talk about him or
yes,
Daniel?
We should talk about Basha. 2 points per game or something like that since Lindstrom has been out. Ultra dynamic forward, maybe not necessarily in terms of skill level, but in terms of the way he plays, definitely. Always attacking the middle, always attacking at angles, getting defensemen to move the wrong way and so on. And I think he's one of those players who kind of has this sneaky physical game where he's not necessarily hitting people all the time, but it's more how he wins inside position, how he blends that with speed. And I think as he continues to, rise the ranks and so on, you're going to see him take a more assertive physical approach to the game because it's already there. And there's a real chance he's this sort of top 9 plug and play winger who can do a little bit of everything, a little bit everywhere, and contribute on both special teams. Okay, so Jiricek down at 24.
I think I have a guy around this range. I'm really high on Alfons Freij, Swedish defenseman. I think Lassie has him ahead of Arjo as well.
He does.
He is a mobile, good four-way mobility, not super fast, but he moves the puck. He can shut down plays. He does a little thing about everything, and I think he can predict as a top 4 defenseman. I think I wasn't as high on him early in the season, but he's really picked up and he's shown some good development. He can also be deceptive, manipulated with the puck. He doesn't have like top pair potential, but probably a good top 4 defenseman. I really like Alfons Freij, and I think he should be in the 20 here somewhere. I don't have a big clue about everyone else here, but as Lassie has him ahead of Jiricek, he has him ahead of Artamonov, he has him ahead of Hemming, Kiviharju as well. So I think Freij should probably be here somewhere.
Yep, he's 25 now.
We should put down Artamonov just for Dylan. Yeah, he has many positives, and that's probably his range still. Like I talked about him before, but the off-puck game, he has some scoring instinct in the offensive zone. He can play a quick give-and-go game, and he has flashes of manipulation too in his playmaking. So there's a potential higher level of skill there, and we have to respect the production in the KHL, the fact that he earned a role so early, and he looks like an experienced KHLer in the way he plays a two-way game, so he can come back on defense, all of this. So strong habits, a decent skill level, and flashes of more. Like he could be a good pick.
I like how he gets off the wall too, right? Like he can cycle it and he can get off the wall and get into the middle of the ice, which is pretty impressive at the K at his age.
Do you see him in this range, or do you like him more than?
I think I have him like 19-20. I think I liked him a little higher.
I think Artamonov sounds pretty analogous to Luke Misa, who we had, I think, 20th last time. So I think it's Lauren's chance now to talk about him and what she thinks of the upside.
Yeah, so I've seen Misa probably 25 to 30 times already this season, which is, I think, the most I've seen any player ever. But everything that was there at the beginning of the season is still there now. He's the most consistent player on the ice, for Mississauga, consistently driving offense, creating off the rush. The defensive work rate is high, the motor is high, and he's developed more of a physical game in the last couple of weeks that I didn't see at the beginning of the season. He's taking a lot more contact. He's playing between checks. The stick work and the puck handling remains an easy selling point for me. The intelligence. I really like this player. I mean, I don't know if the upside offensively is necessarily as high as some of the other peers, like you talk Liam Greentree or Beckett Sennecke, but I easily think that he should be able to carve out a role, at least middle six, maybe bottom six on the wing, probably in the NHL instead of playing center. But he's just a really easy player to like. He's always making something happen on the ice, and ever since he's moved to the wing on their top line, it's just been lights out. And I know the production has slowed a little bit since the beginning of the season. He's clicking more at like a 90-point pace this season as opposed to triple digits now. But it's not for a lack of trying, and he's creating more offense instead of just being limited to the perimeter now. He's trying to work the puck to the inside. He's crashing the net a lot more, which I didn't see a lot at the beginning of the season. So he's really just kind of improving steadily as the year progresses. And yeah, it's been encouraging to see, to say the least.
Hey, it's David. I'm editing this. The recording cut out here. Daniel is talking about Dean Litorno.
He has a huge selection of handles, huge range, because his arms are so long. He has a shot. He has all these plus tools, and he's like probably a 5.5, 6 skater at 6'7", who's mechanically fluid. He very well could be a guy that in a redraft is like top 10. But the problem is he plays at St. Andrews College. He's crushing there. He has 45 goals in 39 games, 88 points. He's a Boston College commit though. So, he's a monster. We need more crossover on him for sure, so we can rank him properly. But even in his couple Sioux Falls Stampede games that he played, he was fairly good for a guy that's coming right out of like Canadian prep high school. He's outscoring quantities like Castagna from last year. He's just kind of a monster. Like he's 6'7". So as for upside, like I think this is a good range with the risk. He's probably going to go high just because of the tools and the physical profile. He wins every single battle at the prep level. It's kind of absurd.
Sorry, how tall did you say it was, Daniel?
Yeah, 6'7".
Okay,
That's
so
pretty normal.
David, do we have anyone who you like more than Dean Letourneau at 28?
I think it's his range, honestly. It's just figuring out the hockey sense with him, and that's going to be hard because of the level he plays at. But their tools are all there. He's a really interesting project, like Silayev, but on offense almost. We just need more viewings on him, so I think we should put him down right now. We can move him down or up a bit at the next meeting. I have two defensemen that I think we should talk about: E.J Emery and Ben Denford. One is a puck mover, Ben Denford. E.J Emery is more of a shutdown defenseman.
So E.J Emery has been I think he started off the season quite strong, faded through the fall months, and then picked it right back up again in recent weeks. He's a very toolsy player. He's a pretty intelligent player. The issue is that he tends to be very pattern heavy. So he'll like make a quick fake, not realize that he opened something up, and then turn the puck over and so on. But the tools are incredible. The range, the speed, his aggression defensively. And then in the last few weeks, especially in that series with Sioux Falls, he really stood out because he was activating to the play. He was experimenting. He was trying to create offense. And sometimes it looked really bad. Other times it was like, wow, he just like worked around that guy and then threw a look-off pass into the slot for a chance. So with Emery, there's a lot of projection, but the boom potential is really high. It's right up there with defensemen who we've ranked 10, 15 spots higher, but the development curve is going to be longer and more assembly will be required.
I think he's a stopper in the NHL. I think he's a stopper more than like he's long, he's fluid, he's athletic. You know, he can cover the range defensively. I really liked him early on in the season, like you said. Maybe I missed that down blip in the fall, but I've liked his game all season. I don't think there's 30, 40 point upside probably in his game, but I think he's got enough juice to make strong outlets and transition the puck well, but then just be that really mobile stopper on the back end for you.
Yeah, his stick on puck is great. He really showed that in the All-American game too. He actually and his angles are always good. I always feel like his angles are good. He's creeping up for me as well. The other thing is though, he told me in an interview that he felt like the more confident he got as the season goes on, the more offensive chances he was going to try. And what Mitch is saying, and then his goal in the All-American game kind of shows that he's trying more offensive things now that he's comfortable. So we might be surprised at what his offense could be.
He was a pretty offensive player coming up too, like very deceptive, try to jump into the play a lot. Like he's, again, like Cam says, I don't think he's going to be a big point producer, but I think he can get it to a level where he can create on breakouts and facilitate in the offensive zone, which is when you add in the defense, that's really all you need to be a middle pairing guy.
Yeah. He says he models his game after Brandon Carlo and Keandre Miller. So, I mean, somewhere in the middle, maybe.
Lauren, Ben Danford time.
Not gonna lie, when David mentioned two defensemen, I did not think I was gonna hear Ben Danford's name just yet. I thought it would have been Lucas Fischer, but I like it. I have Henry Muse before I have Ben Danford and like 3, 4, 5 other players on my OHL ranking. But Danford is super interesting, super mobile defenseman. I've seen a lot more offensive instincts from him, especially in the second half of the season. Lots more activations, lots more jumping up into the play, leading the rush on breakouts, looking stronger. As far as like defensively goes, gaps at the right moments, engages, angles, pretty good at effectively defending the rush. It can be hit and miss against some smaller, faster skaters sometimes. I thought he was one of the best players, or at least one of the best defenders at the CHL Top Prospects game earlier this week. Just a super, I guess, well-rounded defender. He doesn't have any like glaring weaknesses, although I think in-zone defense is probably an area where he can make improvements on as far as not being too aggressive, chasing puck carriers around the zone. Mobile defenseman, two-way guy, probably middle pairing guy at the NHL level, if the offensive flashes can continue to manifest into something more, there's higher upside for sure.
This is the story of the defenseman in this draft. That is, you could take that and put it on any of these guys. So yeah. I like Danford. I like Danford as well, actually. I have a few other players ahead of him. Raul Ballard, Charlie Elick, who is just like more of a supercharged version of Danford, more physical, more aggressive. David, you can save that face for someone else. So I think we also have to figure out Aron Kiviharju as well. We have multiple, I think both Cam and Lassie have Emil Hemming over him. So maybe we should start with Emil Hemming here and then work our way down with the Danfords, the Fischers, the Elicks, and so on.
Yeah. He's a favorite of Lassie, or he was actually at the start of the season. I think he might have dropped his ranking a bit, not too much. He projects as more of a straight line power forward. He's pretty intimidating when he rushes up ice in straight lines, and he's played like a battering ram at the top level. He's very physical. He rushes the net, rushes the boards, rushes straight to the neutral zone. He has flashes of transition passing to like clearing space for a teammate, then dropping him the puck. Flashes of playmaking too. He lacks a bit of diversity in his attacks. I'm not the biggest fan of him because maybe I have trouble getting a read on his hockey sense overall, but the tools are really fun and projectable to the NHL level. So I think it's about his range. Like he's more of a development project, and the right team is going to need to draft him, but you can probably get a middle six turn line kind of checking power forward out of him, maybe more because he has flashes of more, honestly. So he could really explode out of nowhere. But a conservative projection, optimistic, is middle of the lineup power forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable to have here.
Yeah. The fact that he was on that World Junior team, even though he, lots of games he wasn't seeing much ice, but the fact that he made the team and they trusted him out there in the role that he was playing in that bottom six, and he's not super electric or his acceleration, but he has good top speed. And like you said, that north-south game, he can work the cycle, he can get off the wall well, and in the Liga he can do the same thing, which is always a good sign for a 17-year-old kid. So yeah, I think he's a late first.
Okay. Is it also time to put Kiviharju down?
Yeah, we shouldn't drop him too much because he
Sure.
has some special elements in this game. The puck moving ability, like he can make forecheckers miss all the time with spin moves. Super great timing on these moves. His inside edge skating is amazing, like the way he spins, but he's not super elusive like a Quinn used because he doesn't use those outside edges. He doesn't have that kind of lateral acceleration that the top defensemen who are smaller in the NHL have. He doesn't. The playmaking game doesn't translate to the offensive zone as much. It's mostly a breakout thing. And the defensive game, although he tries hard, like I like his effort overall this season when he played, but it's going to be more of a weakness for him at the NHL level. And lastly, we have seen many defensemen like him fail to live up to expectations either in their draft year or post-draft over the past few years, like Soderstrom, Boqvist, and the like. So it plays against him too.
Okay, so we have two more spots in the top 32. We've had Danford, we've had Henry Muse brought up, who Lauren has over Danford. We've brought up Charlie Elick. Any really strong E.J Emery. We didn't put E.J Emery down, so EJ has to go down. EJ's taken 30 probably, and Kiviharju has 31. But
I have one guy.
Okay.
You know him. I think you really like him too. Tanner Howe, my boy.
It's head shake from Daniel.
I don't know why I like him that much, but I really like him. I think we should find him a spot somewhere in the top 40 because, like, I know the skill level isn't that great, but he's got the details down. He plays with pace, got a skating ability, drives the net. He wins pucks back. He has a two-way game. He can make some passing plays too. Like, the skill level is reasonable, and he has all the great habits of an AHLer plus the pace. So he's smaller. I would like him to be like 6'1", 6'2", but I think he's going to play and surprise some of you maybe with his scoring.
Daniel, look at his points, Daniel, right? Like, and he didn't play with anyone good last year, the year before, so he was doing it all by himself, putting up those numbers.
His physical skill is insane. Like, it's one of the best I've ever seen. Like, in terms of like how he handles contact proactively and how he wins battles and everything. But I have like 4 WHLers ahead of him. Like, I have Parasak ahead of him. I have Terrence Smith, Elick, and even go to USHL. I probably take Boisvert over him too. I just think he's just so like low upside. Like, it's like there's like he's like I don't even I need to watch him more, but
you don't need to watch him more. You know exactly what
You've
he is.
seen him.
It's just
yeah.
It's just that
I feel like for Joey and I've got to fight for Teddy Stiga here. I like Boisvert a little better than Stiga if he's a center, but I understood before the show went on, like I think it was Cam that said he's unsure about him being the center, and I get that. With Stiga, like all he does is put up points, and I've seen him do some things, especially in the All-American Prospects game where he was away from different line mates. He's a very patient goal scorer, but he's also a very patient passer, and actually his passing was pretty good on display. Very good on the power play. He does go wide occasionally, which works for him. He also could be a line driver, and he's got a lot of confidence. He's one of those Boston, Massachusetts kids, rather, that just has that confidence. And I think he's going to be a really good player. Like, I think he's probably a third liner, but could be a second liner if all broke right. He's got a lot of good hockey instincts, but I don't know. Everybody seems to just ignore his scoring, and it's there.
I am
Last year,
also a
not so-
Teddy Stiga fan.
Yeah.
He's smart.
He is. And there's
He
a lot of
is.
skill there. It's sneaky. But when he gets the puck along the boards, he can pull it off instantly, drive the inside. I think he's pretty similar to Tanner Howe. But you're just blinded, David. That's all. You just don't have eyes. You can't see
I like
anything.
the tools more for Howe.
No, but Mitch is right. Like, I have in my notes, he is a really good cycler. And you know what? We don't see enough cycling in the NHL anymore. But when guys can do it, it's effective.
He's good at meshing with talent too, right? Like he can facilitate, and he knows where his role is. I think he's probably more like a guy that's going to go in the 50s, 60s, 70s and maybe take the long path, and if he can get there, than being an early second or a late first rounder. Bosa is a player who I have a lot of concern about his feet, but the skill level and the smarts I think are higher, that I'd have him ahead too. But they're very, it's very similar type stuff at this point.
Okay, I put Ben Danford down at 32. We were just talking about other players and how much we didn't like them, so I figured maybe we should put the guy down that we kind of like as the
Nice.
32, as the 32nd prospect. So, I think
Sacha
because
Boisvert.
yeah, exactly. I think Boisvert probably goes down now. Power forward potential, probably as a winger, nasty playmaker, nasty shooter. He's kind of like a less pacey Rutger McGroarty, so a lot of potential there if he continues to work on making plays with his feet moving.
He's a
starting to get
long-term
stronger
project.
too. He's put on weight. He's starting to get stronger, and when he's stronger, he is going to be pretty good.
Okay, so we're going to do two things now. We're at 33. Boisvert is at 33. So first, we're going to talk to Jimmy about some of the other players in this range, and then we're going to bring in Greg, our goalie expert, to talk about goalies who belong in the second round, how he ranks them, what he sees them as. So take it away, Jimmy.
Yes, for this range, I have Simon Säter, 6'3" center. He's been playing a lot in the SHL lately. He is a smart player. He's ahead of the play a lot of the time. He's a good board player. He's a good playmaker. His skating is a flaw, which brings the potential down. But all in all, I think he's a very smart player. And it's a lot of, I think he has a high floor with that size and being that smart. And he can do the little thing. Transition play is good too. Defensive play is good. So I like him in this range. And a bit later, I have a couple of defensemen, a Czech defenseman in the SHL around 40s maybe. Dominik Badinka, 6'3", I think he is. Pretty good skater, but still very raw, not polished player, but play in the SHL like 20 minutes a game. So he can defend against the rush pretty well. He has some manipulative moves when handling forecheckers. And Leo Salin Valenius, a little smaller defenseman, like 6'0", but a really good skater, good puck mover. Needs to work maybe on his defensive side of the game, I think, a little bit more. And he's a two-way defenseman that's not having really, he is not the first guy. He's not your best defensive defenseman. He's not your best offensive defense, but he moves the puck and he's very skilled. So he's around the 40-ish too. So I guess there's a lot of players now, but Simon Säter is for me the best player in this range.
Okay, now let's talk about goalies. Greg, give me your list, all the guys who you think can fit in the second round, and break them down a little bit.
Sure. So what I have so far is essentially a group of 5 goalies that are in that range. 2 are for sure, I think, going to sneak in that first 2 rounds. And the guys that I have atop the list are Ryerson Landers and Emil Vinny, the one North American ranked guy and the one European ranked guy. So I have them in that top 55 sort of range. The guy I have on the cusp of that second, third round is Carter George. So those are the three that I have kind of in that range. And then the two other ones of the top five that I have kind of firmly in the third round are Kim Saarinen and Vidi Luivara. Sorry, another one of the Finnish guys. So that would be my top five. Linders, I think for sure would be my top pick. I know he's not the biggest goalie in the draft, and it might not be the way they actually go down, because I know a lot of times you can just kind of sort them by height, and that's the way the teams will draft these goalies. But for me, Linders is clearly the most talented goaltender of the group so far that I've seen. Like I said, not a huge guy, but he takes up a lot of visual space with his stance. I think he does a really good job of making himself appear a lot bigger than he actually is, which will endear himself a little bit more to the scouts, I hope. For style comparison, I give him sort of a Martin Jones, Cam Talbot-y sort of in terms of his visual style. So if you're looking for a style comparison, that would be the two goalies I would first come to mind. But he's not super aggressive. He sets up deep in his crease, but he holds his ground really nicely. Has a ton of patience for a young kid. You don't see goalies hold their edges quite as proficiently as he does at that age, at least. So for odd man rushes, 2-on-1s, quick developing plays, he's pretty solid. He can handle a lot of those and get to the back door because he isn't taking a ton of depth, even though he isn't a 6'5" behemoth. He can still get there. His skating is good enough. And the other big thing that I had for him that sets him apart from some of the other younger goalies just is his smarts with his rebound control. So not only is he good at controlling it, but he puts that puck in good spots and good situations where other goalies may, just sort of get repetition and, okay, I always put it in this spot, always put it in the corner. But if he sees a threat coming from the side, he'll put it in a different spot. I've seen him change the direction of his rebound control at the very last second. So that shows to me that he's got a higher level of IQ in terms of just his play reading ability and understanding the situation around him more than other young goalies at that age, which is a huge green flag in my eyes. So he's been my favorite from the group. I think easily I could, convince a team to take him in that second round, because he's like I said, he is, for me, his ceiling is a pretty good NHL starter. So obviously not going to blow the doors off in terms of thinking we have a great goalie class this year, but he's definitely a guy that can play, and I think he's definitely worthy of a pick in that second round. And then the other guy, like I mentioned, who I would firmly have in that group is Emil Hemming, another guy. He's 6'2". So not overly huge, but big enough. Most goalie coaches I talk to, they like that 6'2", 6'3" range for the goalies. If they're a little mobile, you don't want them to be massive, because then they can open up more holes. And I see that from him. I see a very compact frame as he moves across the crease, but he can really move. He's got an explosive skating ability, very little hesitation. What I had noted for him was that it feels like he takes command of the play, which is very odd to say for a younger goalie like that. So super confident in his save selections. Another guy who's got a pretty good IQ. I feel like he reads the play well, puts rebounds in good spots. His skating does need some work. I think he's not as strong or as explosive as you'd like to see, but that can get there. For me, that's not a huge red flag. I think that's something you can definitely work on and get better at. But, his details are great, really good post integration. His edge work is fantastic, moving while down on the butterfly. He's one of the best of this class, and really good flexibility. His core strength is in his movements and stuff. You can tell he can seal the ice really well with how low and down he can get. So I have him just a slight notch below Linders in terms of his ceiling, but right up there in terms of this class of goalies that we have. Goalie experts in the group, or
I have attempted to, at least this season. I agree actually with you. I know general consensus, public consensus has George over Linders. I prefer Linders. I mean, I know I'm a little bit biased as far as I've seen Mississauga in person, again, like probably 30 times this season already. Mm-hmm. So, but just like the athleticism, the reflexes, the glove hand immediately stands out, the ability to track pucks from distance through traffic. Yeah. He's not, like, as far as like glaring weaknesses go, I feel like maybe the rebound control at a little bit below where George's might be, but just really impressive goaltender night in and night out, especially on a Steelheads team that is really, really porous defensively, constantly allowing odd man rushes, forcing him into the most ridiculous saves I've ever seen sometimes. So and then on the other hand, I guess George is like much calmer in net, likely because the defense is not quite as porous in Owen Sound.
Yeah.
But he's a lot more, I guess, calm, steady in net, like a little bit. I guess like the lateral agility is not quite to where Linders is. That's not to say it's not poor by any stretch of the imagination. And I know NHL teams are probably going to favor that because he's not so chaotic in the crease. And that's probably why he's, I guess, the top consensus goalie in the draft right now. But I am partial to Linders. I think what he does for Mississauga, you take him out of the equation, that team is nowhere near the top of the league, or at least in a playoff spot. I think what he's done this season has been absolutely tremendous. And I think, yeah, it's just the record there, his record, his stats speak for themselves. He's just been really good this season.
Yeah, I think if you're doing Linders versus George kind of head to head, Linders definitely, I feel, moves a lot smoother. He's a little more confident in his save selections. George, he's kind of boxy the way he moves around. The style comparison I gave for him was Anton Forsberg. Just in there's just a slight delay, I feel like, in some of his movements and the way he moves around the crease. But I think the thing that stands him out, that maybe scouts love the fact that makes him feel confident, is his puck handling. I think Carter George is by far the best puck handler of the top of the class that I've seen. He can really zip that puck around, and anytime that puck goes down in his zone, he's looking down ice trying to set up one of his teammates. I think a lot of scouts really like that because they see a goalie who's active and in the play, and that jumps off the page to them. I don't know how much of an impact that actually has in his ability and why you'd want to draft him higher than another guy, but it certainly is a nice perk that he has, that he's able to rip that puck around. And he's definitely confident even when he has pressure, players coming down on him. Carter George can make a move and get around the guy and then zip it down the ice. So not many guys can do that at his age, which is exciting to see.
Okay, so while we were discussing goalies, I did some math and I figured out the next 8 rankings. So we'll go through this. It's on the board sheet, and then you guys tell me how stupid math is, and give me your superior version of this. So we have at 34, Henry Muse, Raul Boilard, Tarek Parashchak, Terrence Smith, the nastiest hockey player in the draft, Charlie Ellick, Ryerson Linders, Thomas Galvis, and Tanner Howe. That's 33 to 41. So
it seems fine, honestly.
Is there anything in this group that is particularly offensive?
No, I think we have them in terms of upside. I think it's pretty good, honestly. Yes. The way you have them.
Wins again.
Okay, so it's David again. I'm trying to edit this. Unfortunately, we lost some parts of the recording. We talked about the players from 30 to about 40, I think, and now we'll be just describing them. Raul Boilard, who has the same kind of elements like the board work, the supporting ability, but on top of it, he shows more playmaking, more hockey sense overall. So there's a bit of a gap here, and I think in the 40s there is that's his range with Howe and other players like him, Cole Baudouin.
Okay, so David, you said you wanted to go through and talk about these guys. So I just lost internet there for like 60 seconds, so I don't know who was talked about or what.
I talked about Raul.
Okay.
You can talk about Henry Muse.
Yeah, I mean, I had Muse ahead of Danford, but it's not for anything other than that Muse has more offensive upside than Danford. It's just that he has struggled to show it at most points this season. I mean, he even played right wing for, I think, 3 or 4 games in December. And I didn't feel like, I only saw one of those games. I didn't really feel like he had settled into that change of position, and he kind of looked lost in that game. And at certain points, like when he's on, like he is up in deep in the offensive zone, creating plays, manipulating defenders. He's just lights out. But far often this season, I feel like he's been a lot more passive with the puck, with his rushes. He's been a little bit, not necessarily scared to create or anything, just like maybe it's not the best thing he should be doing. Maybe in Ottawa, they're trying to rein him in a little bit as far as like the offensive risks that he takes. I think heading into the season, we thought he was a clear top 20 guy, and I just don't think that's who he is right now. And that also muddies the projection a little bit, because if he's not activating like crazy right now or consistently making the high high-end offensive plays that we saw from him last season and even before that in his minor hockey days. What kind of defenseman does he project to be in the NHL? Right now, I'm not sure he's the best at neutralizing plays in his own end. The rush defense can be a problem at times, even though he's a great skater. He can get beat by larger players. The gap can be inconsistent. And then the in-zone defensive coverage can also be hit or miss between him and Frankie Morelli, his defensive partner, when they play together. So that's probably why he is slid. And I'm not going to put up a fight as far as like Danford over Muse. I think he's just NHL teams will probably value a taller defenseman at the draft, and Muse is only, I think, 5'11", 6 feet tall. So this is probably about the range given the upside. It's just whether or not he can put it together at the next level.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit of a low pace guy. He likes to really settle the game down and control it from there. And the OHL is getting better. You know, a decade ago, you could do that and rack up the points and make it look easy. But nowadays, it's a little bit harder to slow the game down every time and make plays. That I think his saving grace, right, is that he's such a strong rush defender already, and something that's very translatable to the NHL. And I think we do see flashes of a little more urgency when he gets pressed into doing it. So lots of upside there. Daniel, do you want to talk about Tarik Parashchak?
Yeah, like, you know, he's going to be a controversial player just in the public sphere. And I think even with teams, like, he's going to be all over the place in terms of rankings. The situation is that that whether he plays on the first line with like Riley Hyde or he plays with Funk and Andre Becker, like, he's playing with high-end WHLers all the time. He's not so much of a driver, but more of a connector. He's a really strong puck supporter and battle support player. He finds soft pockets. He finishes plays. He can shoot off the pass. Like, when I saw him last year, I thought he was just going to be like a depth checker, and then all of a sudden he exploded this season for a ton of production. It's really going to come down to like the defensive value he brings on the penalty kill. He's a great pressure pusher. He picks off pucks. He anticipates. He's actually a threat on the penalty kill. But I think this is probably the natural range for him because he just doesn't drive a lot of play himself. It's a lot of just finishing off plays, which, you know, has some value in itself. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with him. I've seen him like 40 times. Like, so it's pretty clear what he is, in my opinion.
He is a big wild card, depending on, you know, the production is there. He's a very interesting player to watch. But the most exciting player in the draft is Terran Smith, who I've been calling Terran Makar for a few years now because he's got the Makar-esque footwork from the point. He's always trying the Makar moves, the lateral quickness, the quick stop, shimmy shake, fake shot, so on. Little heel-to-heel thing where you kind of step into the guy, go heel-to-heel, explode out the other way. He's really mastered that type of stuff in the WHL. The difficulty is that he hasn't mastered everything else. The skating is a bit of an issue. He's not that explosive. The lateral movement isn't always going to create separation for him, and the defense can be quite passive as a consequence of the skating. But he is essentially a WHL rookie because he missed basically the entire, last 5-6 of the WHL season, maybe more last year. So he's really exciting, big wild card, but so much style. There's just style in the way that he plays. He's very flashy. He's very fun. He had this game against Red Deer where he was faking out everyone, faking drop passes, and then curling the puck around a defender to drive the net. He scored with one of the best curl and drag shots I've seen from a player in this draft. He was so dynamic that game, and then that just continues to build in with the general theme of him. He's just a really exciting, really talented player who's starting to come into his own. And then Charlie Elick is big toolsy guy who can beat people up, hit everyone in sight, and make a nice breakout pass up the middle. A little bit rough around the edges, but a lot of potential there.
The next guy in line, I think, is
Thomas Galvis.
Thomas, yeah. He's a really interesting prospect. Like, he's a smaller defenseman. We talked about our bias against some of these in recent years, especially when they come from maybe larger ice or systems where there's less forecheck against them. They don't necessarily learn the game the same way. The issue with Galvas is that he's a the strength is that he's really a high-end skater. Like he does everything in movement, catches puck in movement. He's very elusive, very active, always jumping into play. His rush defense is really close. Like he has a tight cap with the position because he's always in the play and because he's a high-end mover. So his whole game revolves around his skating. That's a strength, but that's also a bit of an issue because I think in some ways he moves before he really plans an offensive movement, I would say. So it's all about skating in a direction and then seeing what is skating created instead of having a plan before that, manipulating something to really open up a great look for someone. So his game revolves around his skating, and we have some hockey sense doubt right now, but he's a really interesting prospect who's very dynamic. I don't think the size will matter as much with him because compared to others because of the high mobility and because of the aggressiveness in his game. But we have to monitor his development and take into account the weaknesses, but the strengths are pretty interesting.
I could add on Galvis because I've seen him a few times. He can make a really good cross-ice pass, like a difficult pass. On defense, his stick is active. He's got an active stick, and he will shot block. And I do think those kinds of things will make up for some of what you're talking about on defense, that he does that because his offense is really good. I mean, I had Will Skahan higher, but that's because of his size. And surprised David hasn't mentioned him yet, but I mean, eventually he will. But I do like Galvis.
It's about his range. Like they have same kind of upside, I think, but in completely different roles.
Right.
Scan definitely should be there. Yeah.
Sorry, what?
I was just saying, Scan. I like Galvis too, but Scan should definitely be in this next range. That kid has never missed a leg day in his life. Like he's got massive tree trunk legs, and yeah, he's just pure defense. But he can flash some fun offensive stuff every now and again. It doesn't generate points, but he can make some moves with the puck. He can handle it at times coming out of the zone or in the offensive end too. But projection wise, he's gonna be meat and potatoes for sure. But that looks like an NHL player there.
He's a pretty deceptive guy too on breakouts. Like you can see he doesn't choose the best play. Like you can see that he's trying to like find guys through a forecheck or deceive a little bit. And so yeah, he's kind of that fun little blend of a guy who can shut things down, but also keep pucks out of his own end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he screams second rounder.
Okay, so the next tier is up. Oh, sorry. It is now. So we have Cole Beaudin at 43. We have Will Skahan at 44, Lucas Fisher at 45. I think Fisher probably has to be over Skahan. It's same game, but one's a little bit more skilled than the other. Dominic Bedinka at 46, who Jimmy gave a good review about. Teddy Stiga, who Russ likes, and I think plays a very likable game in general. I think he's a guy who can probably rise for us in the second half of the season if he continues down the path. Jet Luchenko, who we haven't talked about yet, Adam Yeko, and Emil Vinny, the second goaltender. So anything in here that is particularly egregious or complaints? David, I already was going to go to you. Don't you worry.
I just have a question for Jimmy. Do you prefer Badinka or Zayne Parekh? Sorry for pronunciation.
Well, they're very close on but I have ranked Badinka ahead of Zayne. Badinka is bigger, he's a better defense now, but Badinka is also a bit older. So I think Badinka should be a little bit higher as of now.
I have another question. Have you seen Stian Solberg?
Yes, he should be here too somewhere. I think
you like him more than the two other guys.
Maybe between them, maybe. He was a little bit up and down at the World Juniors, I think, which is the only games I've seen with Solberg, I should say, too. So I don't know how much stock you should put into that, but he's also a big competitive guy, a defensive prospect, mostly, I think, and played very much on that Norwegian team.
Oh God, he was playing half the games, right? Unfortunately, those are the only ones I've watched too. I haven't watched him in league play, but I saw him 4 or 5 times in Sweden there, and violent, loves the physicality, loves to step up and layer the boot, chases the hit sometimes, which pulls him out of position, but like he is a physical guy first and foremost. When you're playing 30, 35 minutes a night, you could see it was wearing on him as the tournament wore on. The decisions started to become less and less quick and impressive, and you started to make some boneheaded plays. But another one, I think him and Skahan are very similar type of players. Just that kind of meat and potatoes wear you down. put them in the role that they're going to succeed in at 16, 17 minutes a night, defensive zone draws, killing penalties, and you'll find more success. And you don't need them to move the puck as well for you.
Because I brought him up because I think him and Leon Mogly should probably be ahead of the two guys you mentioned. Solberg, because of the insane physicality, like it's a really special skill, while the other two don't really have that kind of projectable element that's really a separator for them that will enable them to rise through the ranks and be different than other prospects. And Mogly is just like a model favorite, I think, for Chase. He's very active. He does a bit of the same things as Cayden Lindstrom. He's all over the ice all the time, very active, and he has the mobility, he has a good level of skill, and I think he's just figuring out the game right now. Pretty sound defense, another strength, impressive offensively sometimes, other times he's pretty quiet, so there's nothing like amazing about his game right now, but he's got enough tools and he's willing to make plays enough that I think he might have a better development than the other two defensemen that you mentioned, but it's all their range. Like they belong in that kind of space, I think.
I second Mogly. I love him. He's fun. He really impressed me a lot. And the coaches played him a ton, which is pretty good. Against, when they played Sweden, like he was matching up against that top line all night, playing like 25, 26 minutes a night. Yeah, Uslan put him in the spin cycle a couple of times, but for the most part, he held with them and he was making plays and he looked creative offensively too. He's a fun one. I think he's got some hills that he'll have to overcome on his way up, but there's some upside there.
Yeah, well, talking about defensemen who could become from 6 to 4 on a lineup, maybe probably bottom pairing, maybe a chance at 4. I think the two players who have the highest chance at 4 are Mogly and Solberg because of the physicality. I would have him ahead of everyone.
Lassie, though, does not rank Solberg as a top 64 player, so I
disagree.
Have him.
That's fine.
We'll have him at the bottom end of this, so he'll be at 52. But now,
the only thing I will mention is Luchenko and Baudouin are probably going to go much higher than where we have them ranked. Like just based on, I actually do. I think he reminds me of Misa in a lot of ways. Aside from like, I think he plays with a little bit more of a physical edge. He's way more willing to lay the body, battle for pucks and that sort of thing. I just don't know if the offensive skills are quite as high, and I do prefer Misa's skill set a little bit more. But still, same intelligent player, definitely more than impactful at this stage. And he's probably a guy that NHL teams would probably like at the top of the second anyways. And then with Baudouin, it's just like, it's very easy to see him as like a fourth liner in the NHL already. Like all he does is just play super defensively responsible, supporting, and the skating is the biggest limitation right now. I think he's got a lot more offensively to show for. It's just that he's so limited by the foot speed that he can't get to those areas kind of to create the most dynamic of plays, but he can beat defenders down the wall pretty easily already at this level, even though he's not the fastest player in the ice. So yeah, those are just two guys that I guess NHL teams are probably going to like a little bit more than some of the other.
I mean, we've got most of my guys, I feel like, like at the end of the board, I've got Michael Hage, a player who I don't love, but I mean, he had the projection last year. He had the injury, like I was saying in the Slack. He's basically a rookie this season. So I hated his game early on in the season, but it is clearly taking steps. He's a bit of a galloper through the neutral zone. He doesn't play with a ton of pace, but when he does get up and go on his rushes, there's some skill there. I think that there's potentially second line skill there if you can really put it all together. But he's a really interesting one to look at.
I could add one thing about Haig. He told me with that injury that literally like a month ago he was just starting to feel 100%.
Yeah,
like it took that long.
Yeah, he looked so sluggish when we saw him there in Pittsburgh. Like he was not moving well at all.
He wasn't healthy. No.
Yeah.
He's really a great rusher with the puck. Like I love his skill. It's just projecting him. He's a bit like Trevor Connelly, but I think Mitch said that like you remove the skating aspect, but everything else is about the same. He's really dynamic.
He's definitely a center. We could say that, and this isn't a great center draft, right? So,
yeah, it's interesting because all of the crossover boards have Hage at like 40, but none of us have actually gone to bat for him until 53. So we might actually have to work that one out a little bit.
Yeah, we can bring him up because of the upside. Like he's a high upside, low certainty, boom or bust prospect. We should have him. I always regret leaving these prospects too low at the end of the season. Like, was it Bradley Nadeau last
Ooh.
year?
Yeah, no, no, yeah,
Yeah, we just put him too low because the upside was there. So it doesn't matter if you want to draft a bottom 6 guy, maybe with high certainty. I'd prefer having Taj there.
David, again here. Same issue as before. I'm talking about Maxime Massey.
I have my issues with him. He's not scoring. He should be scoring. The skating is about the same as last year, but he has that kind of developing power for a game. He can score from a distance. There are some times where his playmaking shines, especially below the goal line. So he has his moments. It's just that he can't seem to figure it out inside this team, and he needs a playmaker with him. I'm not sure it's really his year, but we might regret bringing him too low because there's some scoring upside there, and he has the frame.
My argument would be that we should probably push Hage to either above Tanner Howe or below Tanner Howe because of the insane upside and his development curve. And he's in the USHL. Like realistically, every USHL guy that we talk about looks raw because that's the USHL. That's how the league works. And so I feel like if we're holding it against him, we should probably be holding it against Trevor Connelly too, and so on.
Yes, we should.
You can push him ahead. That's a good argument.
Wow, finally, someone has acknowledged my brilliance.
I always do.
See, I was referring to you specifically acknowledging it. I'm going to save this video, and it's just going to be my desktop. It's going to play every time I open my computer.
He's a riser, John Mustard. So John Mustard, USHLer, in the All-American game, played on the second pairing, second line rather. I've been hearing about him. He's got a great release. He's got a tremendous shot release. He finds open space on the ice for that release. His speed is surprising. Like he has an acceleration that you don't expect. I mean, he scored the game winner in that game, was impressive, but that wasn't why. He had been really rising in the last few weeks. I wanted to mention his name, and
I think Mustard is a good pick here. I was pretty impressed with him in my last viewing. Like he's a very dynamic rusher. He's a deceptively fast guy. Like he doesn't have the posture of a guy who's fast, but like he can really turn on the jets and surprise people. And so I like him here. I think this is another one of those guys who, probably in a couple months might have him 45, then maybe 35 in the last meeting and so on. So Mustard at 55 is good with me. I guess we have
Andre Kosh.
I have some players too.
Okay, David, tell us about him, and then you get a turn, Daniel.
He's very similar to Emil Hemming. Bottom 6 projection. Skating depends on the viewing. I haven't figured out my grade for it. Like the output is fine and he strides really hard. The mechanics could be a bit better. He's a straight line rusher who forechecks well, who goes to the net, but he has those flashes of playmaking. Like he's very similar in terms of projection to Hemming. He's been injured for like weeks, so we haven't seen his development, but at some point I consider him maybe a first round pick just because of the high NHL certainty and the way he plays. It's his range with other similar players like him.
I actually have a lot of players here. Like I have Colin Ralph. He's a Shattuck St. Mary's kid. He's another like big defender. He's like 6'4", 230 pounds, but he's like a 5.5, maybe 6th grade skater. Really, really tight gap, physical, guides the outsides. Lot of different edge work. Really basic offensively though. Doesn't really move pucks in the middle of the ice. Just kind of shoots low shots, looking for chaos. Pretty junior habits or like prep habits that you see from high schoolers, but his physical profile, his skating, all his defensive habits kind of reminds me of like a bigger right-handed version of Chase Cheslock from last year, who went fairly high. So I like him. I like Colton Roberts on the Vancouver Giants. I think he's like a super steady, sustained zone defender. I think he blocks lanes. He's ahead of the play. He mental maps everything because he scans a lot. Inside lane is almost always covered. A little bit chaotic in transition, but he has a flash of offensive skill as well.
Okay. So I put Colin Ralph down at 57 and then Colton Roberts at 58, who I also like. I think he's a very talented player. Jimmy, what about Zayne Parekh? Do you want to get him on the board, or is he an honorable mention?
I think he should be on the board. I have him very close to Badinka and Solberg, so he should definitely be inside the board if those guys are where they are.
There we go. Number 59, we got locked in there. So I have Justin Poirier, who is just sick. He's a tank.
I really like him.
And Spencer Gill, who is a little bit of an awkward, maybe a little bit is understanding. He's an awkward, tall defenseman who's really clever from the point, not necessarily like in the way that he handles around guys, but in where he leaves pucks in space. Every shot is very tippable. He's got a real nasty shot pass where he kind of steps in and then rolls it across the slot. A really solid rush defender, even if he looks shaky doing it. Long-term projection, but he's very much in the same mold as Zeev Buium. So a pretty exciting player, and if you can break through the awkwardness there.
And Justin Poirier, he's in the mold of Cole Caulfield with some more weaknesses. Like he plays a physical game better than Caulfield in his draft here.
He's the Brinket. That's my comparison.
Yeah, actually,
that's
a better comparison for him. So he's very physical. He goes to the net. He can win pucks from much bigger defender by leveraging his smaller size and his skating posture. And he's almost mean, like he hits too. But the foundation of his game is really scoring, his shot. Like he can make catch and release shots, one-timers. He can shoot in stride. He's really great about his placement. Like he reads goalies super well. It's just that the only thing that he does is shoot right now. Like he either gets the puck and shoots it in the offensive zone, or he rims it to a teammate. Like the playmaking game, he hasn't really understood how to take pucks in movement, attract a second defender, and create plays for teammates. He really places that kind of burden on them, except of the rush, where he can now use his speed and really get on the wing and fire. So we need to see more diversity from him, and there's the size. Like he's 5'7", a real 5'7". So there's a lot of risk with this projection, but he could become an NHL scorer, even a top 6 one, but the chance of that is pretty small.
The other guy, my last guy that I think I want to fight for because I got rejected on some of the other ones, would be Matvei Grinin on Muskegon. Skating, not a strength, but he's physical. He plays aggressive. He's proactive in the way that he plays. There's a lot of skill there. He's almost certainly, if he plays in the NHL, going to be a do-everything third liner other than skate fast. So it might be his projection in the NHL might be like heavily dependent on who drafts him and the type of team that they're building. But I see a versatile, skilled player there in the right position. So he would be my guy to round out this round.
Do we want to leave Carter George as an honorable mention? Like I know Greg had him in the third round, but he's going to go like top 40. So
yes, everyone who we've mentioned so far, I'm just putting as an honorable mention. So like everyone who Russ has brought up, everyone who Daniel brought up, they're all honorable mentions, and I think all of them are reasonable.
Because we mentioned them.
Yes, that's right. You nailed it.